All right, it's deciding time. Welcome to GamesBeat Decides. This is your weekly podcast for smart discussions about dumb stuff. I'm your host, Jeffrey Grubb, and this week we're extra smart because I'm joined by GamesBeat lead writer Dean Takahashi.
That's me. Hello.
And of course, my cohort and subordinate, Mike Minotti.
I always make things extra smarter.
Oh, I love it, Mike, already. Bringing that heat. Today's episode, we're going to talk about Oculus Touch, Last Guardian, PlayStation Experience, and the Game Awards. Probably going to lump those together a little bit. We'll see how it goes. But first, I want to thank everyone for joining us. As always, you can always get more of us on GamesBeat.com. Email the podcast at games plus the plus sign podcast at VentureBeat.com. And finally, if you like what you're listening to, you can subscribe. We're on Stitcher, iTunes, Google Play, wherever you catch pods. If you have a podcatcher and we're not on there, let me know by emailing gamespluspodcast at venturebeat.com, and I'll make sure to get us up on there as soon as possible.
Is podcatcher a word?
Podcatcher is like the old word. Like, that's the word they called it, like, originally, like, before, like, iTunes. Yeah, like, in, like, 2005, I remember, like, reading an article about podcatchers and stuff, and I was like, huh? But I'm going to keep using it. I'm bringing it back, Mike. I've decided.
All right, I believe you.
And if people are excited about me bringing it back, go to iTunes, give us a 5-star review. That helps us get new listeners. It introduces people to the podcast, basically. But yeah, that's the introduction spiel. So guys, let's talk about our last week a little bit. I know you guys both were traveling, so neither of you were on the show last week. Dean, you were in Japan. Mike, you were at Disney World.
Yes.
How were the trips?
Well, Dean's work was probably actually about video games, so I'll let him kind of talk.
Yeah, I got invited to give a speech in Japan about the world of gaming, and got to go there for about 4.5 days, minus the travel. Got to go through Tokyo, Fukuoka, and Osaka, and had some nice visits with companies like Square Enix, which was very nice to do the Final Fantasy 15 launch while I was there.
Yeah, what was that like to be there for the Final Fantasy 15 launch, like in Japan as that was happening? Were there like lines and stuff? Did you see that stuff?
Yeah, there were lines. It was kind of like going to Mann's Chinese theater in Hollywood for a premiere of a big movie like Star Wars. It's a big deal to them. And they had the CEO of the company, a bunch of actors and actresses and comedians, and they had the director of the game. And there were like dozens and dozens of photographers from Japanese press. So it was fun. It was a big deal.
Cool. Dean, you're like fading in and out. Can you make sure that your microphone, whichever one you're using, is kind of a little bit close to your mouth?
All right.
Mike, but you went to a Disney World. That's not gaming related necessarily, but did you do any gaming while you were traveling?
Not a whole ton. I kind of thought that I would be playing a lot of Pokemon during the trip, and I barely really touched that at all. My kind of go-to these days when I'm playing anything while I'm traveling is just Smash Brothers, just because it's easy to just play like a little computer player, and it's kind of fun. The one thing I saw that might be of interest maybe to Dean is, because Dean, I think you wrote about that drone show that they were doing at Disney World, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
So I got to see it. It was really cool. I forget who did the technology behind that?
Intel does it. I actually I think I looked up videos last week of this and actually got routed to our article on VentureBeat because I was like interested in it. Yeah, and Intel can do up to like 10,000, but I think the Disney show has like 500 like light up LED drones.
So yeah, all this thing is it's like a show over water, and they kind of do it over water so that if a drone falls, it just falls into water. But the drones are nothing more than lights basically, and the lights can change color and whatnot. But they kind of move around each other to make these formations, and yeah, it's all synchronized. It was really cool, and it's pretty obvious to me that this is like a testing ground for whatever the next Epcot night show is going to be, because they've had the same one there for about 16 years now. And,
but did the shapes, did they look realistic? That's why I was wondering, like in person.
Realistic might not be the word. Sometimes they were much more. Like sometimes it would make like an actual outline of something. More often than not, it was almost a bit more like a symbolic kind of thing, or
kind of abstract.
Well, yeah, especially, and like I said, I'm without actually being certain, like if this is an Epcot thing over their water, that's looked at at 360-degree angle, so you won't really be able to do shapes right. If you want to do shapes like that, people have to be looking at it kind of from the same place, or it has to
Yeah,
be something.
that's what I was wondering. He had to be like in a prime location, and how they're going to handle that.
But it was really cool looking. I mean, it was like definitely something you watch. You're like, oh, this is like some future stuff right here. This is neat.
Excellent. I think for me, I mostly just spent the weekend getting ready for the baby, mostly. But I tried to play some games. I had to play a ton of Last Guardian. I did that review. That went up today. I like it. We'll talk about that in a minute. Also, Oculus Touch. I did that as well. So it was a lot of that, and then, nesting and things like that. But with that out of the way, I guess we can kind of jump into that first topic. And this is going to be virtual reality, Oculus Touch. The subject that we're going to discuss is, do Oculus Rift owners need to get Oculus Touch? But we can go a bit broader than that as well. For people that don't know, this is Oculus's like motion track controllers, and I have them. There we go. Yeah, right there. It's kind of like loop-de-loops. They fit around your hand really nicely. Oh, this is the left hand. Like there's one for each hand. They're $200, and they kind of provide the same functionality as the Vive's wands that came included with the Vive, with a few more bonuses, a few more features that are neat. But at this point, it is kind of one thing you do notice is that a lot of the games either don't support it, or if they do, they don't take full advantage of it. So, Jason, you've used these a little bit. I'm wondering, what's your thoughts? Do Oculus Rift, or Dean? I'm sorry. He's messaging Jason over here in our chat for work, and so I'm seeing Dean, and he brought up Jason, so my wires got crossed. Dean, do you think that Oculus Rift owners need to get a Touch right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of a very incomplete system without it right now, and I think if you just want to be able to take full advantage of the system, then you got to have it. It is a bit of a problem that not every game supports it, and there's a smaller universe of games that are going to be available on it. But the games that are using it, I think the ones that are coming are the best so far. So it's kind of a no-brainer for me.
And I mean, I guess I'll touch on some of the other things it's capable of. So, of course, it can do positional tracking and like motion tracking, like you flick it or whatever. It also has analog sticks and buttons on the front and menu buttons. But it also has these sensors, so it could kind of tell where your fingers are resting. So if I try to do this, if I put my thumb down like this and I don't even press a button, like the in-game representation of my hand will make it look like my thumb is resting down. And then if I give a thumbs up, it'll know that's happening, and my character will give a thumbs up. It does the same with the index finger if I point. So you get a lot more gestures and body language, which is
it's weird how that's almost the coolest part, right? Like,
yes.
Because I don't know one of these things, but just in my playthroughs or in my demos and stuff, like that's like when you're like holding a gun and like your fingers are like where they would be, right? Like whatever you're doing, this kind of just helps sell the whole idea much more.
But I think that's one of the things that makes me want to hesitate is that's the coolest part, but really there's only like a couple of games that take full advantage of like finger tracking, and you get most of that is like in the main menu. Like when you're in the menu like picking a game, your hands are there and you get the full advantage of like pointing and thumbs up. But then when you go into like a game like Rec Room, which is on HTC Vive, now it's here, you still just have these big mitts that just do this, and they didn't like do the work to like, and maybe they don't want to, maybe that's not the game they're making. But a lot of games are like that, where you just have a big mitt that just grabs things, and now you have that functionality, but you don't have the finger pointing. And that's like, I'm like, oh, $200 for that. I'm not sure if that's necessarily worth it. But you do, like, Dean, you're right. You do need these for a lot of the best upcoming games.
You're already pretty invested at this point,
That's true. So that is the other issue, is if you are $600 invested in a Rift, I kind of think you have to get it almost. And that's not just because, it does these interesting things. The Rift and the Touch work really well with HTC Vive games on Steam VR. So you could play all those games now that have kind of been cordoned off from you because you didn't have motion controllers. You could buy them, boot them up, and they will work just like that with your Oculus Rift and Touch. So it's kind of this give or take. I think I would lean towards, if you already own a Rift, definitely get it. If you don't, it's probably like, I don't know, you can go with this or the Vive. Both are $800 now if you include the controllers. And so you can kind of go either way, or just wait and see until like the next generation of VR and controllers.
Right, especially with the next generation, you probably, especially for Oculus, you assume that the Touch would be a bundled thing at that point, right?
Right. Yep. And then I'm not sure if there's much else to say. I think in if we're just discussing whether or not owners need to get it, it's yes. But I do want to point out that that I think it's interesting that Steam VR games work just naturally with this. It almost makes me think that if you are going to invest in VR, you can go with the Oculus Rift and the Touch now as like the #1 choice, because everything will work on there except for PlayStation VR games, obviously.
Right.
But you can get, all the Oculus Rift exclusives, and then you can get all these Steam VR experiments and weird little indie games, and everything just works. So, like, if you buy like multi-platform games, you should just be buying them on the Steam store, because then you are kind of guaranteed they're going to work no matter what you plug into your system, which is pretty cool. But yeah, Dean, any other thoughts on this?
Well, I think I'm curious which games you thought were the best ones. I thought that Dead and Buried is the one that I've seen the most in previews that I've enjoyed the most. And, that's like the 2-on-2 saloon shootout game. So I thought the shooter games are actually among the best that could make use of the Touch.
Yeah, I really liked VR Sports Challenge. That's one that actually does bring in your fingers and stuff. Like, for example, there's this dunking mode where you can throw the ball up in the air, grab it, or throw the ball up in the air and then like hold your finger out and spin the ball on your finger as you're going up to the hoop, and toss it behind your back and all that stuff. And having that manual dexterity of being able to do that actually matters in that sort of like slowed down dunk situation. But it's like, otherwise that game is very much just like VR's Wii Sports, which is something that I think other companies have tried, but I think this is like the best example of it. There's this really great mini game where you are playing football, and you're the quarterback. You hike the ball to yourself, and then you choose a wide receiver, you throw it to him, and then the game snaps you over to the wide receiver, and you catch the ball. And it might sound like disorienting, but it's actually awesome. It's very cool to be in like these like fourth down situations where you have to like make the play, and you're doing both sides of it. It really comes together well, and it only works because now they have these controllers. But
I think like one of the big tests now is like in the next few weeks, are you going to use it, or are you going to go play all the console games that are coming? Playing Call of Duty, you're gonna go play Steep, or you're gonna play The Last Guardian. Like, there's so much competition.
I mean, that's been the problem all year for VR, right? Is that the software just really isn't exciting enough compared to kind of just what you're getting on the more traditional game platforms. And I don't know if this controller is immediately solving that issue. It definitely could help in the future, but yeah, it's not like all of a sudden. If you were on the fence about VR, I don't think it's all of a sudden like, oh yeah, there's a touch controller now, we're good.
I would say that it creates the possibility for better online multiplayer social games, which I think are the most exciting things that VR are doing, like Rec Room I keep bringing up. It's a game where you just go online, you're playing games with other people in like a connected multiplayer world. And having motion controls is crucial to that, because you want to be able to gesture. You want to be able to point and give the thumbs up to someone to let them know, hey, you're cool or whatever. But then at the same time, like, we played some VR games like at my Thanksgiving get-together. And, we talked about this two weeks ago, Mike, when we were talking about what games we were going to play. I did play both Overcooked and Keep Talking, Nobody Explodes, and a few others, but those were the two most popular ones. But I think Overcooked on the console, which is just this 4-player cooking game where everyone has to take their stations in a kitchen, I think that was more popular than even than Keep Talking and No One Explodes, because we were all working together, we could all see each other. You didn't even have to look directly at each other, because you're in your peripheral and you could see people getting excited and things like that. And that is something that I think VR does miss, and it is very isolating even when you are taking turns in a party scenario. So and that's just one example of why I might continue to choose console games over VR in the near future, at least. So yeah. All right, guys.
I think we decided, right?
Yeah, we decided. Yeah, get one if you already have a Rift. Otherwise, I think just continue to wait. You're making the right decision there. So Last Guardian. That's what we're moving on to next. I've played or reviewed this. I think, Dean, you have played it, and Mike, you are going to get it, right? Is that right, everyone?
Yeah, I have an advanced copy that I just haven't been able to touch because I've been traveling last week. Okay,
so the question is, was The Last Guardian worth the wait?
Yes.
Mike answered it. There we go. Mike, you haven't played it, but I know you're a fan of this developer. You like Shadow of the Colossus a lot. Why don't you kind of ask us what you're wondering about it.
Well, I guess, does it just kind of feel like, the third game in that trilogy, which, those other two games were PlayStation 2 games. Does it really feel like a very, like that next game, or does it feel like some sort of a next step, 2 console cycles later that maybe you would expect? I guess that's what I'm saying. Does it feel like a PlayStation 2 game, I guess is what I'm asking.
I saw a tweet from that like fake Kaz Hirai account on Twitter, and it says it perfectly. It was, for The Last Guardian, this is not like the first release. We actually just skipped the first release and went right to the remaster.
Yeah.
And that is like pretty... That? Yeah, it feels like a PlayStation 2 game that's been remastered. And that is not necessarily a bad thing, because think of all the kinds of PlayStation 2 games that we got, and compare that to the variety or lack thereof of PlayStation 4 and Xbox One games. We get a lot of shooters. It's 2016, like 5 different like high quality shooters. We get some other things in between. Maybe Steep is worth talking about. Watch Dogs 2 is an open world game. We get a ton of those. We just don't get this like weird variety of like of big companies trying these AAA like weird experiments. And this feels like that, and it feels refreshing because it's something that doesn't get made anymore.
Yeah, I think it's probably a big help that, you could say, like, oh, this is similar to those, but we haven't really had very many games like Shadow of the Colossus or Eco since those games came out, really.
Right. And what's your experience?
It's very hard, kind of, it's very hard to get this right, I think, just to make the creature feel like it's your companion, and that it's going to kind of respond to the things that you suggest to it, or you try to get it to do, but it's not going to do that all the time. So it's, it does seem to at least show that this companion of yours has a mind of its own, but it can lead to very frustrating gameplay, I guess.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit, actually. So what I discovered is I really liked the way that Trico, which is the giant bird, dog, cat creature, we haven't decided exactly what it is. That's the name of that creature, and I really like the way that it behaved like an animal. It's believable in that it's doing its own thing. It has its own wants and desires, but it can also be communicated with on a basic level, and it will also begin to become affectionate towards you because most of the time you're feeding it, and it really likes that, and so it gets connected to you in the way that just about any animal, at least any domesticated animal, would behave. And since that's the relationship most people have with animals, that is something that I immediately recognized and appreciated. But you're right, that AI does sometimes get frustrating when there's this mechanic where you're supposed to command Trico, and you're pointing and saying, okay, go over there and then jump, and he'll kind of walk in the direction you're pointing. But then he'll get like stuck on something, or he'll like look around, and it doesn't it just feels like he's being dumb, which so it kind of keeps it stays in that context of this is just an animal. But sometimes it does cross that line over into being like, oh, this is just a bad part of the game where the mechanics they built aren't working. And when you see that, that's when it's disappointing.
So is this more like Eco than Shadow of the Colossus? Because it kind of sounds like that.
It is. So Shadow of the Colossus was a game where you explored this world to find these giant beasts. You found the beasts, you climbed them, and you killed them. Right? Would you say that's about right?
Yeah.
Ico is an environmental puzzle game where you and this kind of ethereal girl who you have to like pull through this environment and solve these environmental puzzles to get out, while these kind of weird combat moments happen where you have to like kind of mostly avoid them or whatever. And that is this game, where you are guiding Trico through these puzzles where you and Trico both have to get past. So like you're small, you're a little boy, he's a big bird. You have to he's not Big Bird, but you have to get through like a gate.
Great if he was.
It'd be man, I was just on PC because that mod would be the best.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, you can get through like these little tunnels. He's got to like jump over something, but you both have to do something to get that environment to be in that prime state so that you could pass. And so yeah, in that way it feels way more like Ico. But you are also climbing on top of this giant beast who's like who's big and violent towards other things, not necessarily you. So there is some Shadow of the Colossus, but it's not a lot. So the question is, was it worth the wait? And that's a very hard question to answer, I think, because everyone's going to have a different feeling on this. I think for me, the answer is yes, but not because it's some mind-blowing experience. It's because they delivered on that original promise from forever ago. I didn't necessarily buy into the hype over the last couple of years, even if I did early on. So I wasn't expecting I wasn't even expecting like a Game of the Year contender personally. I was just expecting a solid kind of throwback title. And I think that's what they delivered here, something that feels almost like it became unstuck from time and got released now instead. And I appreciate that, and I'm happy to play that in this like 2016 where everything else is a shooter.
I would kind of agree. I would also point out though that it took 10 years to make Final Fantasy 15, and that from what I can tell, I haven't played that one, but from what I can tell, that one looks amazing as a title. It's not held back by some sort of ancient view of how graphics should look in a game, and I do like the gameplay, I think, more in this one, and it's very unique compared to a lot of other titles that have come out this year, and I like that. But the graphics are so...
I actually like the way it looks. They're retro, but they kind of... So they look simple, and they look like they've had a bunch of filters, of modern filters, placed on top of them. There's like light bloom, and the characters, their edges are very fuzzy, but in a way that I find appealing. And the animation is very good. The feathers on Trico have this sort of this look where they are almost they're not physical, like they're just sort of they're kind of fluttering in this in between state. And I think the art is gorgeous. So is it just the graphical, like it isn't Final Fantasy 15? Is that your problem?
Yeah, I mean, it's really just if you're gonna take a decade to make a game, I'd rather see it come out looking like Final Fantasy 15.
Well, it's not.
I think Final Fantasy 15 has a benefit because I'm pretty sure when they moved that to PlayStation 4, they just rebooted it, right?
Right.
They pretty much started over, at least technically. Whereas I think Shadow Colossus, The Last Guardian was kind of just brought over from whatever they had on PlayStation 3 and kind of moved to PlayStation 4 without too much being changed.
And this is not, I mean, it's closer to the Final Fantasy side of the spectrum than it is to Duke Nukem Forever. Like these are games that took a long time to make, and I think that the Last Guardian looks way better than it could have. I think it looks pretty for the most part. But again, whether or not it's worth the wait, for me, yes, it was. It definitely is. It's something that I wanted. It's perfect for this time of year, this kind of break from everything else I'm playing. So I'm going to say that it was definitely worth the wait. Dean, I'm going to let you have your say as well.
Yeah, I guess it's worth the wait. I mean, sure. I just wish that they, put a little bit more beauty into the art of the characters as they did into the art of the environment.
Okay. That might have taken another 10 years, though.
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to our last two topics, which we're going to lump together. What were the biggest announcements at PSX and the Game Awards? We're going to use this topic to kind of talk about some of the stuff that got announced. Is there anything that stuck out to you, though, Mike?
Well, I mean, I think The Last Guardian 2 is the biggest announcement. It
Nope.
was certainly treated as
Nope.
much. Oh, well, what are you excited about?
No,
Jeff?
no. Well, no, you said The Last Guardian 2.
Oh, my God.
I don't think they're going to do that one yet.
I was just saying the wrong names, everything. The Last of Us. That one has both the last in it. Yeah.
Yep.
That'd be funny. Wouldn't that have been funny, though, if they announced The Last Guardian 2?
That would have been hilarious. Yes, I would have been like,
Coming next year.
yeah.
Yeah, but no, The Last of Us 2 is definitely the biggest announcement. I don't think you can argue that.
I didn't watch the Game Awards. I watched PSX. But what was big at the Game Awards? Were there anything? Did anything stand out there?
Not really. I mean, we saw that the Telltale thing is actually Guardians, which we all knew.
I like Telltale, and I'm glad they're just taking stuff and keep making games, making their stuff like television shows. It's fine. It's whatever. It's like comic books at this point. I like that, but yeah, that's not as exciting as the
new Death Stranding trailer was probably the coolest thing from that show.
Okay, let's talk about this game first, just real quick. What the hell? That's my question.
It's going to be some sort of weird, like silent. It still very much kind of almost has a Silent Hill vibe, doesn't it? Where everything's kind of ethereal and weird.
Yeah, it looks like a horror game more than like a military game.
I think that's what it's probably going to be, maybe.
Dude, I kind of am at this point where I love the trailers for Hideo Kojima games and the build up more than the games themselves. Now, Metal Gear Solid 5 was a very good game. I didn't play a ton of it, but I played a bunch. It's very good. But this sort of build up where people are like team fake, team real, if you remember that from Metal Gear Solid 5, like whether or not like this person in an interview was like real or CGI.
Yeah.
And now bringing in like Guillermo del Toro like as a surprise reveal in this game, who's like the director of a couple of good movies. I'm struggling to remember like one off the top of my
Pan's
head.
Labyrinth.
Pan's Labyrinth.
Hellboy.
Yeah, Hellboy, exactly. And he was going to work with Hideo on Silent Hills for PlayStation 4, Xbox One, or whatever with Konami, and that game got canceled. And to kind of have him come out and be in this game all of a sudden was kind of a shock. And then later that night, Guillermo del Toro was like, "Fuck Konami" in a tweet, which was that was the best thing of the weekend, I think. I was like, yeah, okay. Guillermo del Toro doesn't care.
I have to head out in a sec. Sorry about that, but
yeah, no worries.
I do think The Last of Us was very interesting. That they called it Part 2 because to me it felt like that they had a very good ending for The Last of Us. It did sort of leave you with what's going to happen with these characters next. But I thought they did such a good job in The Last of Us of showing you like a first scene and then showing you a last scene and then comparing, what happened in the beginning to what happened in the end. And so now we find out that it's like just the middle of the story, and that part 2 is still coming. So, maybe that's the way sequels are, but I just think the naming of the title itself, Part 2, is kind of funny just because I felt like Part 1 was so complete.
I did see a lot of people talking about they were surprised by it being a sequel. Mike, I mean, you seem excited about this without reservation. What's your kind of take on it?
I guess I always kind of cynically knew that they were going to make a sequel, right? I mean, Last of Us sold like 8 million copies or whatever. It was one of the best-selling games on the PlayStation 3. It was going to happen. So I know, sure, the story was fine. Maybe it should have been let alone. We can say that about a lot of things. You can't leave well enough alone. So you just kind of have to hope, maybe it'll be fine. And then, I liked The Last of Us. It was a very great game. One of the best games in some time. So sure, and I think you can figure out something to do with that story. Yeah, Dean loves it. I'm sure there's, there's without going much, there's still some questions that were left, right? And I do like this idea of kind of leaving it on the note it was left on, and I get that. But I'm also one of those people, like, if a sequel comes out to something that I like and it's not good, I don't let it tarnish the original for me in some way. So in no way, like, the worst case scenario, right, is The Last of Us 2 is somehow bad, which I find hard to believe, or, it has a bad story. That wouldn't mess up whatever The Last of Us 1 did for me.
And you, and you're okay with it being, like, the same characters as well, right? Like,
you know what, if you're going to do it, I think you should do the same characters, right? I mean, I don't really have much of an interest. I mean, I don't know if it was really about the quote-unquote world for me, right? I think we can say that about a lot of the Naughty Dog games. Like, Uncharted, I don't love it just because it's, treasure hunting, whatever. I like those characters. Same thing with The Last of Us. What I liked about that game was Ellie and Joel. I don't need to see, like, 2 other people walking through a zombie area. The fact that it was a zombie game was, like, my least favorite part. I typically hate zombie stuff. But, it's because it was those strong Naughty Dog characters that I liked it. And, yeah, sure, maybe they could have done new characters who, like, run into Ellie at one section, and isn't that fun? But I'd rather just kind of stick around with these people.
I think it was cool that it sounds like Ellie is the main character.
I think I get that vibe, too. They're going kind of telltale walking down on us.
I gotta head out, so...
Right. Okay. Thanks for joining us, Dean. We will finish this without you. You go, and I'm going to probably replace you with a funny picture or something. So,
right.
Yep, have a good one, man.
Bye.
All right, Mike. Then what about Neck 2? How is that not the biggest announcement? Oh, wait.
That was a bit more surprising. I think I, like a lot of PlayStation 4 early adopters, I had Neck. And, like, I played some of it, and I didn't hate it. I just never got very far in it. So... I don't know. Why the hell not? Sure, make a Neck 2.
Yep, I was kind of stunned at that almost, but at the same point, like, it reminds me of like Red Steel 2. Like, it was a launch game, people bought it, so of course we got a sequel. Like, I guess I thought it had been long enough and they hadn't announced it that we wouldn't get one. But
right, surprised if they're going to do it that it kind of took this long. I mean, there was a sequel to Blinks the Time Sweeper, right? So if Blinks the Time Sweeper gets a sequel, then sure. Give Knack one.
Yeah. And then let's see what else. Ultimate Marvel versus Capcom, or not Ultimate, but Marvel vs. Capcom on Infinite. That's right.
That's pretty. I like that series a lot. I didn't really think we would ever get another one, so that's kind of cool. It's interesting that's 2v2 battles again. I know there's all those rumors about the X-Men not being in it as much because they're focusing on the Marvel Cinematic Universe characters, which you can kind of already tell just from the trailer, right? Because they're all using the Infinity Stones and
totally.
all this stuff, right? And that's fine in a way, whatever. Just be interesting to see how it goes. At least this one has a Mega Man character in it, not just Zero, like an actual Mega Man.
Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 didn't have Mega Man.
No, yeah, it didn't. It just had Zero.
I wonder if that was because they were working with Nintendo. That timing doesn't work out. That was way before.
It was too early. It was the weirdest roster thing to me I've seen since Scorpion wasn't in Mortal Kombat 3.
Right.
It was very strange. Like Marvel vs. Capcom, no Mega Man. It was like right when Inafune had left Capcom and they were like canceling those Mega Man games, and like it was like this. Remember, like for a little bit they had this really weird like we're not promoting Mega Man because that'll show him. And I'm like, guys, you own Mega Man. You're hurting yourselves. That doesn't make any sense anymore.
That was that was really dumb. I never got that, and they're still pretty dumb. Capcom. They haven't got much smarter, but at least they put Mega Man in this game.
Yes, at least it's a man. It's not the classic Mega Man, which I'd have liked a little bit more, but Mega Man X is pretty good. And we haven't seen him in a fighting game actually yet, so that's neat.
But on this though, do you think it's kind of weird that I mean, it's not weird. I get why they did it, but it's still kind of weird that they announced this with Street Fighter V still in the state that it's in. A lot of people seem to think Street Fighter V is kind of half finished still. It's been almost a year.
Yeah. Well, this time they said with this game what it's launching with. Well, I don't know if they say it's launching, but it's going to have a campaign and all that stuff. I'm sure it's going to have a very similar character structure, right, where you're going to have these characters kind of slowly rolled out for it, which I'm not. For some reason, I like that in like an Overwatch, and in a Street Fighter, it just seems kind of strange.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder what that is. I think because upsetting the meta in an Overwatch game kind of makes some sense because most of us are playing it casually. I think maybe you play a fighting game a bit more seriously. That might be it. Were there any other big announcements? I guess like the Uncharted standalone chapter, Lost Legacy. What do you think about that?
That seems fun. I think that's cool. I mean, it's basically like at a kind of an expansion, but it's standalone technically. But it's just taking the same engine and whatnot, kind of probably just getting a lot of that team. Like, okay, let's just make this little, probably like 3-hour long adventure, I assume, with Chloe, a character who didn't show up in Uncharted 4. So, I mean, hey, I love Uncharted. I'm down for it.
Yeah, and I think it's smart that they're doing it as a standalone thing. It's probably going to be like $20.
It's kind of like that infamous
right, Last Light.
I forget what it's called. Yeah, but yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean though. But
very similar kind of thing.
More of that would be cool because that's how you should do DLC. Because selling DLC to the small, like a fraction of the people that bought the last game, probably doesn't work. You're probably going to get a lot more people who are willing to spend $20 on something smaller.
Right.
Trying to think if there's any other games that kind of jumped out. I'm still just Knack 2, man. That's my game.
Knack 2. What if Knack 2 is like the greatest game ever?
that would be really funny, and I would actually love that. They're bringing back like Parappa and Loco Roco and Patapon.
Yeah, we got to see the Crash Bandicoot remaster, which I actually thought was pretty cool.
That looks nice. I'm like excited to actually play that. I wasn't really thinking that I would care, and now seeing it and seeing how good it looks, it's like, oh yeah, and especially playing the level in that in Uncharted, where they give you the chance to like actually go back and play that. I'm like, oh yeah, these games were like really interesting and different.
I've actually been playing through those first 3 games on the original PlayStation just for fun, and it has been really neat. Those are fun games, and it's interesting because at the time you could almost knock them for being simple when like the other early 3D platformers were being a lot more sort of experimental, right? Like Crash Bandicoot is basically a 2D platformer with an extra axis,
right?
And sometimes it is just a 2D platformer, right?
Yeah, it shifts to that quite often, yeah.
Right. So at the time I was like, this isn't ambitious enough, but now it's like a lot of that stuff has aged much better than like Glover on
right? Yeah,
So yeah, it's fun to play through now. So I think those remasters will be a good buy.
All right, before we end, I want to go back to Death Stranding a little bit more and ask you if you are okay with with companies kind of showing these games like this, like so far in advance, like Sony's like only now just coming off of The Last Guardian. Square Enix is only just now coming out of Final Fantasy 15. It feels like putting yourself in a situation where you're showing off games like Final Fantasy 7 Remake. Square Enix is going to be right back in that same situation where they've promised this thing, they've showed it, they've generated hype and got people excited, and who knows when the hell that game's coming out. We haven't seen anything about Final Fantasy 7 Remake since 2015, right? So
yeah, I mean they kind of get into this problem themselves, though, right? Especially that Final Fantasy 7 Remake. You know, people were asking for it, and maybe they could have got away with it, but then they had that. I forget if it was at an E3 or what, where they
it was at
like,
the first PSX in 2014.
Yeah, they made that big deal
that,
about like, oh, here comes Final Fantasy 7. It was just like it was on PSN, the original version.
Yeah, it was like the PC version had gotten ported or whatever. Yeah,
and it was kind of like people were literally just turning against them for not making something, so they just had to be like, yes, we are making it. Here's a video, right? And then like say with Kingdom Hearts 3, right, where people have been waiting for that game announcement for so long that it was just feeling like you need to give some sort of assurance that it is happening. So part of it is just, I guess, mismanagement of just maybe these games should have been made or started sooner.
It's what gamers want, though. Like you see people's reaction to the PSX. Like Death Stranding was everyone's like, well, a lot of people's favorite thing that they saw. They're like, yeah, that was great. Like we didn't see what the hell it is. We don't know when it's coming out. It's probably not going to be ready for a couple years. But it's our favorite thing because it got us hype. It got us excited. And that's what people want from these events, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a huge problem with that. You know, whatever. If you want to do a slow burn on releasing stuff, it's fine. It is weird because we are at a time now where it's not... Like, it used to always be like that. When now we're at this time where, you know, you can have Fallout 4 announced and it's out in 6 months, right?
Right.
Or even the Nintendo Switch. Like, we just finally saw what that thing is, and it's going to be out, you know, not too long.
Yeah, I just think it's the only people I would like kind of put it on is probably gamers, because gamers get, on one hand, they like demand this stuff. They're like, it's only a good E3 if it's just big announcement after big announcement like that. But the best E3 was the one where they had Shenmue 3, they had Final Fantasy 7 Remake, and Last Guardian. It's like, okay, Last Guardian came out. Who knows if those other two games like will even make it out in time for the PlayStation 4. So,
but they are right in a way. That was a great E3. Like, I kind of get it. I
agree.
Fun and exciting.
I agree. But then on the other hand, like people are like, okay, we have to sue No Man's Sky for false advertising. Well, in 2013 they showed a trailer. Like, I mean, you hear a lot of from the same quarters. Not everyone's saying that, but some are like, okay, well, you know, Hello Games lied. We should pursue them legal action for false advertising. And it's like, well, no, you guys want trailers early. You want to see these things, and that's sometimes it's gonna, you know, they're gonna come up with ideas, put them in the trailer, and it's not gonna pan out. And it's like, so you can't have it both ways. That would be my only issue.
Sure.
All right, Mike. I think that wraps it up. Is there anything else from the awards or PSX that kind of stuck out to you?
What do you think about Overwatch's Game of the Year? I take it you were fine with that.
Oh yeah, I am.
I'm pretty fine with that.
I think it might be up. It's gonna be my top 3 for sure. I haven't laid out my list yet. We'll do a podcast on that. But if it I'm just gonna say if it were to end up as our Game of the Year, yeah, totally.
So one more thing I want to ask you. I know like 2 weeks ago when I wasn't allowed to say I was playing Final Fantasy 15, and we were kind of talking about it. You're kind of down on the thing in general. I felt like you were skeptical that it would be any good. Mm-hmm. Now that you are hearing some impressions, are you interested at all in it?
Yeah, I really want to get it now. It sounds like the kind of game that I could actually enjoy. I don't know what it is. I think it might be the characters and the way that they interact with each other that people keep talking up. I'm like, okay, I could play a game where that's happening, and I'm doing some other stuff that maybe I don't always love. But I'll enjoy it enough while these cool characters are kind of just being cool around me the entire time. So it's definitely one that now that I finished Last Guardian, I think I might end up getting. So yeah.
Are you kind of like in this thing now where you're like, oh my god, we have to do Game of the Year stuff, and there's some games I haven't played and I probably really should.
Yeah, totally. Final Fantasy's one. I'm like, oh man, who knows if that's going to happen by the time that happens. But yeah, there's a couple others for sure.
And then there's like ones that like I like want to play, but like I don't know if they're really Game of the Year conversation. Like it seems like that new Deus Ex really kind of came out and disappeared pretty quickly, didn't it?
That was one of the big AAA games that I think really missed, because I didn't play it, but then nothing that happened around it gave me the idea that I missed it.
I felt like nothing happened around. I feel like it literally just came out. Everyone's like, yeah, it's fine.
Yeah,
and everyone moved on.
Like the only people that I saw playing it were the people that reviewed it, and then they stopped talking about it, and then no one else was like, oh, here's a cool thing I did in Deus Ex. I didn't see anything like that. So yeah.
No, it's kind of strange. And then like one that was reviewed very well that I really do want to get to is Dishonored 2, but like that was another one where it already does feel like people have kind of moved on from it, right?
I see more discussion about that than Deus Ex, but yeah, you're right.
More so than Deus Ex, sure.
I'm interested. I'm gonna take a look at Metacritic and see what the high scores are for this year.
I think the score. I think that was in the 90s.
Oh no, so yeah, Dishonored I think is like one of the highest ranked games of the year. I am not loving it. I was supposed to do the review, and I got to a point where I ran into a bug, and the bug happened in a level after I had been playing for like 4 hours. Not the level. I wasn't playing the level for 4 hours, but the last time I saved had been 4 hours, and you can't restart the stage. You can't if you load a last checkpoint, it didn't fix the bug. So I had to replay a ton, and I just got so frustrated with it because I was already not really enjoying the environment. That we talked about that. So it's not one that's going to be on my list. I don't think, even once I do finish it. Overcooked is one. I mentioned that a couple times. That's one you should try to play if you can. Get some of your friends over and play that one. But other than that, I'm not seeing a ton that stand out. You have to play Titanfall 2. I know you haven't played that.
Yeah, I'm planning to do that finally because I was playing. I mean, I'll tell you what though, I'm still playing Final Fantasy 15 sometimes.
And you beat the game, you finished it.
Oh, I full beat it before I left on the trip. And that was an interesting week because I was going to be gone, so I was just kind of not racing through it, but I was spending just a lot of time playing it. But yeah, it's usually I would kind of get sick of something after that, but I still there's all these other quests that I still kind of want to do. So yeah.
Yeah, that I will have to try that at least. And then Inside, I think is the other one I want to try to play.
Inside was the one game that was nominated for Game of the Year at the Game Awards that I would have been upset if it won.
Have you played it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I liked it. It's fine.
Okay.
But come on.
Right.
It's fine. It's Limbo. It's like a better Limbo. I liked Limbo, but you're not going to tell me that Limbo was in Game of the Year consideration for whatever year it came out.
Right.
I'm not saying that a 2D game can't be Game of the Year. That's what
you're saying.
Ori last year.
You're bigoted against 2D games. I know you are.
I love 2D games. Gave it last year. Ori was Game of the Year.
That's true. You did do that.
Yeah, I did that.
It was a very good game. And it was an indie game too. So you indie games, 2D games. You don't mind. You love everything. Mike.
No, but I don't know. I don't want to get into that conversation it's not enough of a game. But I mean, the gamey parts of it are relatively simple. It's platforming and pulling switches to solve puzzles sometimes. Sometimes got a bit more creative than that. But
and Overwatch is better. So and that was decided.
Overwatch is better. We can definitely say that. Yeah.
All right. So, Mike, I think that's going to bring us to the end.
Yeah, I have to pee. Can I say pee on this podcast?
You cannot.
Pee.
No. You have to stop. This is awful. This is the worst thing that's happened on podcasting. All right, Mike. You just keep saying P, and I'm going to tell everyone. Dean is gone, but you can find him at Dean Takahashi on Twitter. I think that's right. Or Dean Tak. DEANTAK. Mike, why don't you tell everyone where they could find you?
Okay, my address is 600 East Western.
Bring a baseball bat.
You can find me on Twitter at Tolkoto, TOLKOTO. Always go to GamesBeat, check out my rating there. And that'll be good enough. That's about probably all I want to see of you guys anyways.
And he's got his other podcast. Tell him about that.
Yes, the Exploding Barrel podcast. Listen to that. I changed my mind. I love you all again. Go to ebpodcast.com to look at that.
And I am Jeff Grubb on Twitter. You can find me there. I tweet too much. And then I also sometimes make YouTube videos. You can get those on youtube.com/Jeffrey Grubb. Mike, I think we've made some good decisions. We've decided well.
Decisions.
We definitely made decisions. That cannot be argued. Thanks for listening, everybody. You weren't here for this, Mike, but here's our new outro. No cats. No cats.
Yeah, no cats.
No, you can't say it with such glee. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah, no cats. Cats are awful. I like it.
No cats. All right.
No cats.
No cats. We're still live on Facebook. You could say something there. The podcast is over.
Jeff sucks.
Oh, damn it.
Let's get him.